Welcome to the Orange Twist, your 10-minute shot of insight to shake up your thinking on leadership, culture, and change. Hosted by Giovanna D'Alessio, Master Certified Coach. Episode 27. When Trust Wobbles, the hidden architecture of team trust. Let me begin with a simple image. Imagine trust as a table. It stands on 4 legs: reliability, openness, acceptance, congruence. If one leg is weak, the table becomes unstable. And if one leg is missing, the table cannot carry weight. Trust works the same way in teams. Most leaders talk about trust as if it were a feeling, something vague, something atmospheric. Yet, in practice, trust behaves more like a structure, something built through repeated behaviors. And like any structure, its stability depends on balance. Each of us tends to strengthen the leg that we personally value most. If you are driven by delivery, by keeping promises and meeting deadlines, reliability becomes your anchor. You trust people who follow through. Precision and accountability signal safety. If you value transparency and dialogue, openness becomes your anchor. You trust those who speak clearly, clarify expectations, and are willing to hear different opinions. If empathy defines your leadership, acceptance becomes your anchor. You trust those who listen, support, allow mistakes, and respect human limits. And if integrity guides you, congruence becomes your anchor. You trust authenticity. You trust alignment between words, feelings, and actions. We extend trust most easily to those who mirror our strongest leg. So similarity feels reassuring. And yet, teams are built on difference, and difference tests trust. I once worked with a leadership team that prided itself on reliability. Deadlines were sacred. Projects ran with military precision. Clients were impressed. But internally, something was off. In meetings, people rarely disagreed. Concerns surfaced only after decisions were made. So frustrations accumulated quietly. The table stood firmly on one leg, reliability, but openness was fragile. And eventually, that imbalance began to show. Small misunderstandings became costly delays because people had not felt safe to question assumptions earlier. The structure looked solid, but it was wobbling. Let's look more closely at the 4 legs. Reliability lives in observable behavior. I take action, I keep promises, I meet deadlines, I'm on time, I follow up and follow through, I deliver. Reliability creates predictability, and predictability reduces uncertainty. In certain environments, this leg carries enormous weight. A team high in reliability can execute with precision. People know what to expect from one another. But reliability alone does not guarantee trust. You may work with someone extremely reliable, yet still hesitate to share a concern if openness is missing. Openness lives in communication. I clarify expectations. I value different opinions. I'm willing to hear what others say. I give and receive feedback openly. I share what I feel. So openness creates clarity. And clarity prevents silent assumptions from taking over. So when openness is present, tensions surface early. Conversation happens before frustration hardens. Think of a project meeting where someone says, "I'm not convinced this timeline is realistic." That small moment of openness can save weeks of hidden frustration later. But openness without other legs can also create instability. Teams may talk extensively, explore many perspectives, and still struggle to move into action. Acceptance lives in emotional maturity. I respect others, I empathize, I listen, I allow mistakes, I accept limitations, I assist others to grow. So acceptance creates psychological safety. People remain engaged even when they struggle. Learning becomes possible because fear is reduced. Imagine a team member presenting a flawed proposal. In a low acceptance culture, the mistake becomes embarrassment. The person withdraws. In a culture of acceptance, the leader might say, "Thank you for putting this forward. Let's explore together what we can strengthen." The conversation stays constructive and the person stays engaged. Learning happens. Acceptance does not mean lower standards. It means separating the person from the mistake. And finally, congruence. Congruence lives in alignment. I speak my truth. I am authentic. I am sincere. I set boundaries. I make rules clear. And I do what I say, think, and feel. Congruence builds credibility. When leaders are aligned internally, others experience steadiness. There is less guessing, less decoding. People do not need to interpret hidden signals. I once observed a leader who spoke constantly about collaboration. Yet decisions were always made privately before meetings. So the words say collaboration, but the behavior said control. So the table looked elegant, but one leg, congruence, was missing. Trust eroded slowly, almost invisibly. And now, consider your team. Every team has a dominant leg. Some teams excel in reliability. They deliver consistently, targets are met, execution is strong, yet conversations about conflict or feedback remains shallow. Some teams are rich in acceptance. They care deeply for one another. Support is visible. At times, however, standards blur and difficult truths stay unspoken. Some teams value openness. Dialogue is vibrant, ideas flow. Without disciplined follow-through, energy disperses. And some teams emphasize congruence. Principles are clear, boundaries are respected. If empathy is underdeveloped, this can feel rigid. So trust becomes unstable when one leg carries most of the weight. So what does this mean for teams that want to develop trust consciously? First, make the four legs visible. Trust cannot remain a vague aspiration. It must be translated into behaviors. So invite the team to assess itself. Where are we consistently strong? Which behaviors do we demonstrate reliably? Which leg receives less attention? These conversations already build trust because they create shared awareness. And second, strengthen the least developed leg intentionally. If reliability needs enforcement, clarify commitments publicly. Renegotiate deadlines explicitly. Make follow-through visible. If openness needs strengthening, create structured feedback moments. Encourage dissent in decision-making. Normalize naming expectations. If acceptance is fragile, Debrief mistakes without blame. Recognize effort alongside outcomes. Make listening a visible practice. If congruence is weak, clarify boundaries. Align decisions with declared values. Address inconsistencies calmly and directly. Trust develops through repeated micro behaviors. Consistency matters more than intensity. And there is also an inner dimension. Reliability calls for discipline. Openness calls for courage. Acceptance calls for compassion. Congruence calls for integrity. As Otto Scharmer reminds us, the quality of results in a system reflects the quality of awareness from which people operate. So teams mirror the inner capacities of their leaders. When leaders grow in discipline, courage, compassion, and integrity, the culture follows. Trust becomes structural when these four qualities are balanced. A stable table can carry weight. A balanced team can carry complexity. So let me leave you with a reflection. Picture your team as a four-legged table. Which leg is strongest? Which leg quietly weakens the structure? And at the personal level, which behavior do you practice naturally? Which one requires more conscious intention? So trust rarely collapses suddenly. It begins with a slight wobble. So strengthen all four legs. Your table and your team will hold. If this episode stirs something in you, subscribe to The Orange Twist, your weekly shot of insight on leadership, culture, and change, served with a twist. So join me next time for another fresh pour of perspective.